I've wanted to do this video for a long time, and now it's finally time. Today we talk about what I think is one of the most beautiful pieces that have made it down to us from the Renaissance, and really one of the most beautiful songs that I think I've ever heard. This is Giulio Caccini's setting of Amarilli. Amarilli is an Italian poem by Guarini, and we're not exactly sure which Guarini. There are a couple of candidates. And it's a very simple poem, but it ends with such a striking imagery that it elevates the simplicity to something incredibly intimate and powerful, sincere. It's just beautiful. And what Caccini has done is he's produced basically the perfect musical setting. So I'm going to read to you the lyrics and translate them for you, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the song. And finally, we're going to listen to three of the great masters of Italian singing. Beniamino Gigli, representing the tenors, Giuseppe de Luca, representing the baritones, and Ezio Pinza, representing the basses. So, here are the lyrics to Amarilli. Amarilli, mia bella, non credi, o del cor mio dolce desio, d'esser tu l'amor mio? Credilo pure, e se ti morta assale, dubitar non ti vale. Aprimi il petto, e vedrai scritto in core: Amarilli, Amarilli, Amarilli è il mio amore. Which translates roughly, but relatively literally, just so you can get the flow, to Amarilli, or Amaryllis, I guess in English. Amarilli, my beauty, do not believe, O sweet desire of my heart, that you are indeed my love. Believe it still, and if fear assails you, there's no use in doubting. Open up my chest, and find it written on my heart. Amarilli, Amarilli, Amarilli is my love. It almost sounds like it wouldn't come from this time period. This song was written around the year 1600, so the poem predates it by at least a couple of years, and it's surgically intimate. It's crazy. It's just so striking. And again, what I said about Caccini earlier is that he matches the power of this poem. He writes this very beautiful melodic line, and he's written a basso continuo under it, which just means he's written a very particular bass line, and then between the melody and the bass and maybe some other notes that he left in the score, there's enough implied for the accompanist to fill in the two middle voices in the accompaniment, and that's how you get a four-part harmony. So actually, the melody and the bass basically completely imply the harmony for the entire piece. This is very common for pieces written in the period, so they left some creative freedom to the accompanist to embellish and create the middle voices. Now, the versions that we'll hear today all use a standardized, written-out four-part harmony in the accompaniment, so you'll hear the same motion happening in the piano, but it's very beautifully filled out. And Caccini does something that you might be familiar with if you listen to modern jazz music. Ultimately, jazz actually, of course, borrows it from classical music. But Caccini uses simple chord progressions that make sense in their own key, nothing extraordinarily complicated about them. But he modulates to a lot of parallel and related keys, and so you have not just chord progressions, but you have progressions of progressions. And they keep the music so interesting, so vibrant, and at the same time never complex, never burdensome. And it's so colorful, and he has access to minor colors, to major colors. He interchanges them. It's just brilliant. So it's a classic mode mixture, classic use of parallel keys. And again, in a lot of jazz music, you'll hear subdominant, dominant, and tonic. Very classical progression. And of course, in jazz, they'll add sevenths and other extensions to the chords, so you get a little bit more harmonic color. But the fundamental chord progressions, chord sequences are quite simple. And yet, when you sequence those in different keys back to back, so you have 2-5-1 in one key, and then you have 2-5-1 in a different key, and then you have 2-5-1 in a third key, and then maybe you go back to the original key. Suddenly you have all of these colors, and so all the building blocks are very simple, but the end result is extremely vibrant. So now we're going to listen to Beniamino Gigli at his farewell Carnegie Hall recital that he gave in April of 1955, beautifully accompanied, and he gives a shortened version of this aria. I've chosen the late rendition that Gigli gives right at the end of his career. At this point, he's about 64 years of age, because I like the intimacy that a singer has with just the piano on this piece. And I also think Gigli sings this remarkably beautifully. I honestly prefer it a little bit over the earlier recording from the late 1930s that he made in Berlin with full orchestra. And again, I think a lot of that is just because I like it better with piano than with the orchestral arrangement. In either case, both recordings are wonderful. And so let's take a listen. I've done some additional audio work on all three of these recordings to hopefully bring out more of the clarity and intimacy of the voice and the beauty of the piano accompaniment. Add a little bit more space. I've just re-EQ'd the sound and then opened up a slight stereo image. So let's take a listen. Beniamino Gigli, Carnegie Hall, 1955.
Amarilli, mia bella, non ne credi o del mio cor, dolce desio d'esser tu, l'amor mio. Credilo pur, e se ti morta sale, dubitar non ti vale. Aprimi il petto e vedrai scritto in core Amarilli, 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 è il mio amore. Amarilli, è il mio amore.
So beautiful. It's almost whispered at times, but never losing the core sound and beauty of the voice. He had just such a wonderful pianissimo his entire career. And here he's right at the very, very end. At this point, his voice was showing signs of deterioration. I think up to early 1952, Gigli was basically a monster. Just almost unstoppable. Some of the greatest singing you could ever hear every night. Basically, every single night of him recorded, he was at a superlative level that almost nobody has come close to in recorded history, which is saying a lot. I mean, I know that sounds like an insane exaggeration, but then you listen to the performances and you think to yourself, I think most people singing like this for 6 months would ruin their voices. And he did that up into the beginning of his 60s. So 64 here, struggling with diabetes, having some breathing problems at this point, and still so beautiful, so beautiful. I wanted to say he sings this a full step over what I have in the score. So I picked the standard medium high voice key and annotated the chord progressions here so you can follow along if you're interested in some of the music theory that makes this composition work. And again, you have the middle voices written out by a later editor. They're not original to Caccini, but they're implied almost entirely by the melody and the bass. The final melisma in El mio amore, just so beautiful, so exquisite and beautifully delivered here. One of the probably the highlight for me of the entire piece, and it comes right at the end, so it's just perfectly constructed. You have this what we call a Picardy third, what you expect to be a G minor resolution when he says Amarilli è il mio amore the first time actually resolves to a G major chord, because it unveils the entire mystery of the poem. It resolves everything that this poem has been about. It resolves the sense of doubt with this extremely vulnerable and picturesque confession of the depth of his love to Amarilli. And then that line is repeated, El mio amore, once again, with this gorgeous melisma, and the piece ends. It's spectacular. It really is a work of genius. It's so simple, and yet its simplicity is precisely what makes it so timeless and so deeply moving. So now we get to move on to Giuseppe de Luca. This recording that we're going to listen to is from 1946. At this point, De Luca had been a professional baritone for decades. He is actually one of the most significant baritones of the early 20th century. He created the role of Sharpless in Puccini's Madame Butterfly, the role of Gianni Schicchi in Puccini's Gianni Schicchi, the role of Michonnet in Adriana Lecouvreur, and then also created a baritonal role in Giordano's Siberia, which was a big role for baritones at the time. He created a role for Massenet. So we're talking, this is one of the most significant baritones of the 20th century. And in this recording, he is about 70 years old. And we'll see the finesse and the nobility with which he sang in his entire career is still there. He's going to sing this half a step lower from what you see in the score in the key of F sharp minor. And I think we just need to take a listen and enjoy.
Amarilli, mia bella, non credi del mio cor, dolce desio, d'esser tu, l'amor mio. Credilo pur, e se ti mortassare, dubitar non ti vale. Aprimi il petto e vedrai scritto in cuore Amarilli, Amarilli, Amarilli è il mio amore. Credilo pur, e se ti mortassale, dubitar non ti vale. Aprimi il petto e vedrai scritto in cuore Amarilli, Amarilli.
So beautiful. Such a beautiful, vulnerable, honest quality of voice even. Amazing legato on the melismatic part of that last phrase. Sometimes he'll add a little bit of aspiration between the notes at this point, but right at the end on those eighth and 16th notes, just so clear, such a beautiful legato line, incredible pianissimo, and this is one of the things that Italian art songs offers an opportunity for singers. It's to show the purity of the sound that they can produce, that they can sustain a beautiful legato line, that they don't need explosive and overtly highly dramatic moments in order to express something. And on the contrary, it actually tests the fundamentals of their singing, both from a technical perspective and from an emotional perspective. And what makes all three of these interpreters so wonderful, even in this repertoire, is that they have such a well-developed core sound. They sing very, very clear, pure vowels, and that's what sustains their voices for so many years, and that's what makes their singing so beautiful. They have darkness and color, they have the scuro in the voice, but they never lose the clarity and the clear enunciation, not just of the words. It's not just about the consonants or the desire to have good diction. It's the fact that their very voice is built on producing clear, well-generated vowels. And that actually creates the beauty in the voice. That enables the voice to last. That makes the voice work efficiently. We're built to speak clearly. We're built to enunciate clearly. And so that actually is mostly about the vowels more than it is even about the consonants. And so when we sing, that's what makes great singing great too. Of course, you have to do some other things. You have to make sure there's enough depth, that your larynx is in a healthily low position without depressing it. But ultimately, you have to produce vowels clearly, or you cannot sing clearly, and you cannot sing beautifully, and you cannot sing audibly. Your voice will not carry well. There's a reason why babies are so loud, and they don't lose their voices. They don't get nodules. They scream for hours on end, and their voices are totally fine, because we're built to be able to produce loud, clear, distinct sounds. And so a lot of that brightness and clarity that little babies have is ultimately what, in an adult operatic voice, underlays the entire foundation. But then it's also beautified and balanced with the depth of the larynx, the openness of the throat, and so on. But the clarity of the vowel actually is what gets your throat open. So that's enough of a tangent here. Very, very beautifully sung. Giuseppe de Luca, fantastic to the very end of his career. And what a blessing that we have this recording. And so now finally, we're going to move to the earliest of the three recordings. This is made in 1945, and it features the great Ezio Pinza. Ezio Pinza, I made a special video about him, and he is one of the greatest basses of the 20th century, no doubt. One of the greatest basses that I've ever heard. He had such a beautiful, round, rich, powerful voice, but also had a great higher register for a bass. Was a remarkable, intelligent singer, gorgeous legato line, pure vocal production, none of the woofiness that we've come to associate with bass voices that at times becomes insufferable. He is the complete opposite of that. And I think this recording of Amarilli is one of the greatest recordings that he left us, which is saying a lot because he's saying major bass roles. We have a lot of live recordings from him, studio, and so on. And on the one hand, there's something sad that for basses, there aren't as many major roles as there are for tenors and for baritones. And so sometimes it really is a song that stands out, especially as becoming a vehicle for the bass singer's greatest gifts, to demonstrate them, to share them, to make something really special out of it. But on the other hand, we can look at that with gratitude. So here's Ezio Pinza in 1945, in, I think, what is the greatest of the three recordings of Amarilli that we hear today.
Amarilli, mia bella, non credi, o del mio cor dolce desio, d'esser tu l'amor mio. pur, e se ti morta sale, dubitar non ti vale. Aprimi il petto e vedrai scritto in core Amarilli, Amarilli, è il mio amore. Credilo pur, e se ti morta sale, dubitar non ti vale. Aprimi il petto e vedrai scritto in core Amarilli, 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 è il mio amore. Amarilli, è il mio amore.
Just glorious, glorious. And Gibner King, of the three accompanists or collaborative pianists, whatever you'd prefer nowadays, is, I think, the strongest of the three. What beautiful, beautiful, sensitive, perfectly timed, expressive playing. And Pinza has this massive, rich, round, velvety almost, I don't know how to describe it, voice. And he restrains it so much. It almost feels like you can hear the palpitations of his heart in the subtle oscillations of his vibrato. Like he's taken out his heart and put it to his lips and is whispering over it. Just such a vulnerable, beautiful performance. He only sings out in a couple of moments, and for the rest of it, he sings with such restraint and dynamic contrast and dynamic control and intimate coloring of the voice. It's wonderful. It's very, very beautiful. His legato is superlative. And his entire performance has almost a shading of melancholy, and it's at the same time so passionate. It resolves so beautifully at the end. Just a tremendous, tremendous recording. He's occasionally a hair flat, and he's past his prime at this point. He would retire from the operatic stage about 3 years after this, then go on and have a success on Broadway. But he recovers from any small pitch issues very, very quickly. And it's such a beautiful, moving recording. If you haven't checked out my video on Ezio Pinza, I would encourage you to do that. We look through several of his recordings and look at what made him such a great bass. And I would also encourage you to look at some of my videos on Beniamino and Gigli if you haven't yet. And beyond that, I'm also planning on doing an episode on Giuseppe de Luca sometime soon. So stay tuned. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in. I try to respond to as many people as I can. I apologize in advance if I miss your comment. If somehow I don't see it on YouTube or it's not at the top of my queue, I try to respond again as much as possible. But sometimes I run out of time. I appreciate all the engagement, everyone watching, and have a wonderful day.